First of all, Ms. Gunter, he was asking, name, where are you from, and your job or career description.
I'm Dr. Nicole Gunter. I am the Associate Curator of Invertebrate Zoology at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. You can probably tell from my accent that I am not a local Ohioan. In fact, I was born and grew up in Australia and actually moved to the US for this job here at the museum.
And next he's asking about your educational background, specific degrees, and where you got them.
So, I, like a lot of kids, didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with my career, particularly at the end of high school. I knew that I really liked science. But I wasn't sure what field that I wanted to get into. So first step was I did a Bachelor of Science at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. And that was the one of the local universities. And it's really a great university. So I was really lucky to get in. The Australian system is a little bit different from the US system. So once you do a basic science degree, you begin to specialize in different subjects, and you can then go on to an extended intensive research year called honours, and I did that as well. So as I went through my science degree, I found I was really, really interested in microbiology, parasitology, virology, and particularly the way that the human body dealt with pathogens. And then I got really lucky that in the final year of my Bachelor of Science degree, I was doing a course in parasitology, and I discovered a new species of parasite that infects fish. And my professor at the time, he just asked me if I wanted to describe it, and I didn't realize that you could describe species and that I could describe species. So I went on to work with him to describe that species in my honours year, that intensive research year. And after that, I did a PhD in marine parasitology at the Queensland Museum in association with the University of Queensland. So very similar to the museum-university interactions that we have here in Cleveland. So most of the curators are also adjunct professors at Case Western Reserve University, including myself.
That already sounds like a lot of activity there as a young person. Did you have any internships during that time?
The system is different in Australia, so there isn't the same opportunities that really exist here in the US. So no, particularly in the undergraduate years, no, I didn't. But there are so many amazing internships offered here in the US. Things like the Curtlandia research internships that we offer here at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. That's an 8-week paid internship for undergraduates to work with us on different research projects. Not only that, we take on work study students throughout the semester to also be involved in different projects.
Love it. That is so many awesome opportunities to work with you and other scientists at the museum. He's also asking, as a scientist, you are a lifelong learner. So are there things that you do outside of your research now to continue your education?
Definitely a lifelong learner. I would say that I started my training as a systematist, a taxonomist, and a scientist when I was beginning to walk. I was one of those children that was always playing in the garden. I was really lucky that I grew up with a little bit of forest around. We had a creek down the back of our house. I would go down the backyard with the dogs, sit by the creek forever, catching small fish, small shrimp in little tiny nets, looking at what was around, always collecting beetles and bugs, looking at birds. So that kind of constant engagement. But at the time, I didn't really realize that I would end up in a very similar job. so that those simple things like having field guides or books that describe the diversity of life around you, guides to birds, to fishes, to amphibians, insects, they were probably some of the most useful training that I ever received indirectly. And it's kind of, once you start trying to identify something from simple descriptions and you realize that you've seen something new, it really ignites that curiosity. And still the same today, whenever I'm out in nature, I'm probably really annoying to go on a hike with, because I'm like looking at the ground, looking for beetles and invertebrates, looking on plants and not really making any progress on the hike. But just being engaged with your natural surroundings,
You're making
that's the best way to learn. It's those observational skills too.
I want to comment on the background that you've chosen, because you're talking about spending so much time in your youth out in nature. Could you speak to the background you have chosen behind you?
So the background behind me is a photo I took in some of the rainforests in southeast Queensland in Australia. This is one of my field sites that I went to relatively recently, that I was collecting dung beetles in. So Australia has some really beautiful rainforests, as well as beautiful eucalyptus forests, drier habitats. The savanna grasslands are amazing, but yeah, I particularly like the rainforest because they're cool.
It's a perfect background for this interview. Thanks for choosing it. Now, you mentioned parasitology and describing that new species in your early career, but when specifically did you get focused on dung beetles?
So that was, my career took a little bit of a turn after I finished my PhD. I realized that there probably wasn't a lifelong career in parasites of wild fishes. They're not on most people's radars. So, but the things that really interested me about that system was how diverse they were and how unknown they were, and the reasons behind their diversity. So that's been a really common theme in my research. So I just started applying for postdocs that were those same sort of themes on evolution and diversity. I got really lucky and was hired as a postdoc at the Australian National Insect Collection, doing a project on the evolution of Australian beetles. While I was at the Australian National Insect Collection, I really wanted to maintain my training in describing species. So I spoke to a colleague and a dear friend of mine, Tom Weir, and I asked him if he could think of any small project that I could just do on the side. And he suggested dung beetles, and that sounded great to me because I'd always liked dung beetles. That small project was not small in any way, and it snowballed into a massive, massive career. So that's kind of my path. A lot of luck, but dedication, and also taking opportunities when they were presented to me. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was perceiving there, is being proactive on your own behalf, not being afraid to speak up with your own abilities and skills. Because one of the questions JJ has here is, are there specific things that students who are interested in studying arthropods need to know, or something, a specific internship? And you've kind of spoken to that already, is being proactive of your own abilities. But if you wanted to add anything else about that concept of what students should be pursuing?
So the wonderful thing about arthropods is they're so diverse. And not only are they so diverse, most of them are unknown. So very basic science, such as describing new species, it's still extremely possible for everyone to discover their own species. At the same time, there are a large number of societies that focus on specialized areas. So for myself, I'm a member of the Entomological Society of America, as well as the Coleopterist Society, which is particularly for beetles. And even within those societies, there are scholarships for people at every stage of their career. So the Coleopterist Society has a award specifically for students, and there's one for both high school students and younger students. So if you know that you like a particular group of animals or plants and you're really drawn to those kind of fields, it would be worth looking into those societies that exist out there. Almost all of us, even though we're very busy, we really do like to encourage the next generation of scientists. So hence me doing this interview right now. I would love to take on like one of those high school students doing a Coleopterist Society scholarship. I've just not met a student yet that loves beetles and wants to come and work with me. As they get older, they kind of often develop those interests further and further. But I think very few kids know from an early age they want to be a paleontologist or an entomologist or an ornithologist. So if you are drawn to those fields at a very young age, definitely reach out to experts in the field. In fact, some of my colleagues who knew from a very young age that they wanted to be certain biologists. I have a friend that described a species of spider when he was 14 because he got in contact with museum people. Those kind of opportunities if you can make those connections.
Well, speaking of museums, and we'll make this our last question for you, is how did you end up at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History?
So I did my PhD in association with a museum. My first postdoc was in association with a museum. My second postdoc was at a university. And the things that I missed the most during that second postdoc was my connection to museum sciences. They're very special and very unique, and often that core science relating to biodiversity discovery and maintenance of museum collections, it's something that I'm really passionate about. So for a while there, I thought I wanted to be an academic in a university setting, but I really realized my true passions were in museums. So I started applying they're just keeping an eye out for jobs. And I saw one advertised in Cleveland at the right time. So I sent in an application and here I am.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Well, Dr. Nicole Gunter, thank you so much for taking the time.